It's December, 2025 is coming to an end. I just thought it'd be fun to take a look back at the games that came out this year that I played and make a little tier list. Now, a lot of great games came out in 2025, and there's a lot I still haven't got around to playing yet, such as Ghost of Yotai, the new Digimon Time Stranger game, and a lot more. But these are the games I played in 2025. They came out in the calendar year of 2025. I've of course played a lot of other stuff too, you know, like replaying some of the classics or playing some games I've never got around to playing before. So sit back, relax, get yourself a warm drink, and let's have some fun as we look back at 2025. So let's take a look at the tiers first. First, we've got S tier. To me, this isn't a game that just is one of the best games of the year, but could possibly be one of the best games of the decade. These are games that break the mold, set new standards, innovate. Examples to me would be The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, The Witcher 3, Metal Gear Solid 5. Then we got the A tier. A tier are the best games of the year. When you think back of the year, these are the games you think of. They're the cream of the crop, must plays. B tier then, these are good games. Maybe for some they'll be skips, but they're worth playing, they're enjoyable, and they're worth the money you paid for it. C tier then, this is where we get into more of the murky territory of maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. For me, C is mostly disappointing. There might be good parts of the game, but maybe the game just doesn't live up to the potential it had or the hype surrounding it. And then D tier would just be a flat out bad game. A game that you should not buy under any circumstances, even with a seal. Stay away from it. So let's just go in the order of release. Starting off in January, our first game was Hyper Light Breaker. Now, if you don't know, Hyper Light Breaker was developed by a studio called Heart Machine. They have a few games under their belt, but for me, my favorite of theirs is Hyper Light Drifter. Hyper Light Breaker is set in the same world, so I was quite excited when I seen this game existed. I followed the development of this game through the No Clip series, which was fantastic. All of No Clip stuff is fantastic, so I was quite hyped coming up to the release. Premise for this game was, well, originally it was supposed to be a roguelike extraction shooter type game with procedurally generated levels. Later, they scrapped the procedural part in favor of handcrafted environments, and the game released in early access and is still in early access. There is no 1.0 version yet. I had actually planned to make a series about this game. Coming up to release, I thought about maybe every 3 months checking in on the game, see how it's developing, not just a review of the game, but a review of the whole early access process. This channel is primarily a game development channel, so I thought not just me, but my viewers could learn a lot from following a game in early access, follow what goes right, what goes wrong. But the game came out, I bought it day one, played it, and I was not hooked. There was a lot of issues on day one. There was performance issues. The game did not run very well. Now my PC, it's nothing too crazy, but it's also not weak. I've got a 3070, which should be enough for most modern games, especially a game like this with more stylized graphics. But even with my graphics card, the game, I struggled to get a consistent frame rate. The game didn't have many options either on release for graphics quality, so tweaking your settings to get a higher frame rate wasn't too possible. Another thing that struck me quite quickly was the difficulty. Now, I understand that with roguelikes, the point is you're supposed to die. You're supposed to do a run, gain some equipment, maybe new skills, but then when you die, you get to keep some. And when the next run happens, you start off with those abilities, making the next run a bit easier, and so on and so forth. For me though, I didn't really find this enjoyable. I was constantly felt weaker than everything else in the world. The controls didn't really help either. I think the game felt quite clunky at times. Definitely not as snappy as Hyper Light Drifter's combat. I think the level traversal too left a lot to be desired. I did like though the aesthetic of the game. I think the characters and the enemy designs were spot on. I think the color palette is striking. And overall, I was just kind of disappointed because I wanted the game to be more. Cut now to December. of this year, and the game currently has a mostly negative perception on Steam for the most recent reviews, and overall is mixed. You see, it wasn't just me who felt this way about the game. I think the community as a whole had similar opinions. A lot was expected of it, a lot of hype surrounded the game coming up to release, and you know, almost a year later, and it still has not realized that vision that we all had for the game. And I think this is true even for the developers. I recently seen an article that Heart Machine was laying off some staff, and that the development of this game will be coming to a close. I hope this isn't the end of Heart Machine. They've made some great things. There are a lot of talented people there. I'm sure they'll make great things again. They tried something. Unfortunately, it didn't work, but I really do wish them all the best. So, where does this go? Well, I'm leaning more into the C tier because, yeah, it's mostly disappointing. There is good parts of it. The combat can be fun once you get used to it. As I mentioned, the visuals of the game are fantastic. The performance now is a lot better than what it was. They have put a lot of work into the game over the year, but unfortunately just hasn't panned out the way they intended. But I put this at D tier. I don't know if I'd go as far as to call it a bad game. There's definitely worse. Should you buy this game? At this stage, I'm not sure if I could confidently say that, just because the future of this game is unclear. If the studio was to fall on hard times maybe, and you know, the servers might have to go down. That is a multiplayer game at the end of the day, so purchasing it with the sole purpose of playing with others might not be a good idea. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this game will have a healthy life. Even if it's not the most popular, maybe the servers will stay online for a long time. I think if it was very cheap, like under $10 or €10, it would be worth getting it. But anything over that, I would advise against. But yeah, I think it sits comfortably in the C tier. Next up, in January, we have Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. Now, earlier this year, I came out with a video talking about 7 upcoming action games I was excited for. And one of them was Ninja Gaiden 4, which we'll get to later. But in that video, I mentioned that I hadn't played any of the games in the series, and that before Ninja Gaiden 4 would be released, I would get caught up on the series. And I did. And for my playthrough of Ninja Gaiden 2, I chose this version just because it was the most new and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, it's a good game. I mean, the original was a good game, so that's where the real credit is due. But this remaster overall, I would say, is not perfect. After I finished this, I went back and I played a bit of the original 2, well, the Sigma version and on the Master Collection. And I have to say that even though while this remaster is technically more impressive in terms of, you know, higher poly count models, higher resolution textures, more realistic lighting, I think the Sigma version looks way better. And that's simply because it has a much stronger art direction. I think this remaster has a similar problem to the Demon's Souls remake, where it loses a lot of its art direction in this pursuit of realism and showcasing the tools of Unreal Engine. There's a few levels in this game where the environment looks quite bland. The models don't feel purposefully built for the game. They feel like generic assets bought from an asset store, which probably is the case. Obviously, it's not the Unity asset store or the Unreal Engine asset store. These game developers have access to more private markets where they can purchase game assets. But the downside to that is the game loses a bit of its character when we have these generic castles. Other issues I had with the game, now, as I mentioned, I played the entire series before the release of Ninja Gaiden 4. For my playthrough of the first Ninja Gaiden game, I played the Delta version. I played on the normal difficulty because I heard the game was quite difficult and I knew I had to get it done in time for Ninja Gaiden 4. So I thought I'd play on normal, it would give me a challenge and it wouldn't take me too long. And that was the right choice. Normal was quite difficult, but quite rewarding. And so going into this game, I thought I would do the same thing. I choose normal as my difficulty, hoping for a challenge, but at the end of the day, not taking me an entire month to beat. Normal difficulty here though was way too easy. When I replay this game, which to be honest, I think I'll replay the Sigma version and not this remaster. But when I replay this game, I'll definitely be playing on hard because normal is just way too easy. Other issues I have with the game, in the first game, if there was water, anytime you went diving and swam around, you were always rewarded for your exploration. There was always a chest or an item somewhere containing some treasure. But in this game, there's a lot of water sections, there's a lot of bodies of water, but very few times was I ever rewarded for exploring these bodies of water. They were just level dressing. Another thing I didn't like about the game was there's a lot of enemies spamming projectiles, which exist in the other games in the franchise too, but this game felt overly egregious. It's hard to get in the flow of combat when there's constantly rockets spewing from every side of the screen. There's one level in particular that combines these two dislikes of mine, the water and the enemy projectiles. This level was just not fun. It was not enjoyable. It was a slog to get through, and it's one I will dread on replays in the future. Though that being said, overall the game still is very enjoyable. I know for some it is the best in the series and it's one of the best character action games, period. For me though, I don't agree. I actually think it might be the weakest in the series, for me personally, but that still doesn't mean it's a bad game. There's still a lot to be enjoyed here. A lot of good designs, a lot of fun bosses. The story is paper thin, but that's just par for the course for Ninja Gaiden games. I think I will keep it in this B slot as it's definitely not one of the best games of the year. For a lot of people it will be a miss. It's also not in the C tier because it's not disappointing. It was a fun game. It's definitely worth its money if you get it at the right price. I do recommend it, so yeah, I think the B tier is the right place for it to sit. Next up in April, we have another remaster with the Elder Scrolls Oblivion remaster. Now these two games have a similar thing in common where the underlying code of the game is the original version, while the rendering is handled by Unreal Engine. So they're not kind of full remakes, but they're not remasters either. They're kind of an in-between stage. New assets, new lighting, new rendering techniques, but the overall gameplay is still the same. Now, I love the Elder Scrolls series. Skyrim I own on every platform. I'm sure a lot of people that are the same. Hundreds of hours spent across all different platforms. Morrowind, one of the most beautiful games ever made. That art style would never look good remade. It's perfect the way it is. Oblivion I had started many times, but just never got into it. Not for any reason. I think it just never hit me at the right time. When this remastered came out and it was shadow dropped, I wasn't playing much, so I thought, yes, perfect. A Elder Scrolls RPG to sink 100 hours into and lose myself. And that's what I did. I really enjoyed my time with Oblivion. Do I think this remaster replaces the original? No, of course not. But I also don't think it's a bad way at all to experience the game. A lot of people hate on these remasters like the Ninja Gaiden Black or Oblivion or Demon Souls. And I think some of the criticism is warranted, but I don't think they're flat out bad, unplayable. I think a lot of the times, especially with art direction, they do their own thing. And so when you accept it for that, instead of being something it's not, it's way easier to enjoy the experience. I actually really like what they did with the remaster here. I think the art direction is quite strong. Again, it's not one-to-one to the original, but that's okay. It's doing its own thing. I played on the PS5 and the performance of the game wasn't great. There's two modes, a quality mode and a performance mode. I started off with performance mode, but quickly I realized that the image quality was just so poor. The game uses DLSS, which means that the internal resolution of the game was very low and then upscaled to 4K. The DLSS process leaves you with a real muddy image, especially if the internal resolution is quite low. And that was the case here. So I instead choose the quality mode, which targeted 30 FPS, which was jarring initially, but I got used to it after about 10 minutes. But even on that mode, it did not reach 30 often, especially out in the open. The game is very inconsistent with its frame rate. The game still has a lot of bugs. I didn't have too many game-breaking bugs. Well, I really only had one. It came at the end. I went for the platinum trophy of the game. I saved the DLC for last, so the last trophy I had to get was defeating the last boss. I did this and the game crashed. So I reloaded, I did it again, the game crashed. I then reloaded a save that was a couple of hours before the boss fight, played up to it again, beat him, game crashed. Eventually, I beat the boss, the trophy popped, then the game crashed. But the trophy popped, so it was fine. I got the platinum. But I did have to look up the last part of the game on YouTube. All the dialogue and the story stuff that happened after the boss fight, I did not view that myself through my game. I had to go to YouTube to watch it. This was many months ago now. Maybe the game's patched and it runs way better, but that was my experience with it. With all that being said, where does this lie? Definitely, I had a great time with this game. It's definitely memorable. I look forward to playing it every day when I was playing it. It scratched that Elder Scroll itch I've had since Skyrim. So I think it goes an A tier. It's definitely a must buy. Even on release, I don't think it was a full price game. I think it was like €40 or $40. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was something around that. I'm not too sure what price it is now, but I imagine it goes on sale often enough. Definitely worth buying if you haven't played it. Or even if you played the original, I do think this is something different enough that it's worth buying. It's a memorable experience and one of the best games of the year. So for me, it's going to stay in the A tier. Next up in June, we had Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Now, I am a huge fan of Kojima. The Metal Gear Solid series is one of my favorite gaming franchises. When Kojima left Konami and started his own studio, I was immediately on board for whatever he was going to come up with next. When Death Stranding was announced and we seen the trailers, I was immediately hyped. It was always going to be a day one purchase. And it was. I bought the collector's edition with the BB replica statue thing. And I loved the game. The art direction was phenomenal. Yoji Shinkawa's character designs were so cool as always. The strange world that Kojima imagined was so unique. I had a great time playing it and I left satisfied. But one thing I do remember when I finished the first game, I remember thinking that this gameplay is fun. It's unique, but I can see it overstaying its welcome. If they ever make a sequel, they need to mix it up in a way, because I don't think we could go another game with the same gameplay loop and it'd still be fun. Fast forward years later, Death Stranding 2 was announced. Of course, I was excited. Seeing the new Yoji Shinkawa character designs got me hyped. The art direction in the game was on point. The overall direction of the cutscenes was looking to be just as good as the first one. And so Death Stranding 2 was a day one purchase for me as well. Unfortunately though, I did not like this game. It was very disappointing for many reasons. Number one, the story. I think the story of the game is flat out bad. While the story structure is fine and some of the plot points are fine, it's the characters themselves that ruin it for me. These humans do not act like real humans. They do not show their emotions in ways normal humans do. Sometimes crazy things will happen in the game and then the character will just be so stone-faced, or they'll have some strange bit of dialogue that doesn't tonally match what just happened. Don't want to get into any spoilers, but yeah, definitely there was a disconnect with me and the characters, especially Sam. I think Sam's quietness worked in the first game because he was the player's analog into this new world, and so everything being explained to him was really being explained to the player and it made sense. But now in Death Stranding 2, where the player has already been in this world and Sam has already existed in this world for a long time, also Sam now is a father. With him still being so quiet in this game and kind of one-dimensional, it really ruins the story for me. There's also a lot of issues in this game with pacing. There's a lot of story reasons why you can't just progress. For example, you have this mobile ship in the game that can transport you between locations, but there's always a reason why you can't use it in times you would want to. It's always stuck in tower when you would like to go back to this location because of the story. There's just always a reason why you can't use it when it makes the most sense to use it. Another issue I had with the game was the gameplay. Now my fears came true that gameplay loop of delivering the packages and battling the terrain, that for me overstayed its welcome. By the end of the game, I was just playing it to finish the game, but I wasn't enjoying the gameplay anymore. Coming up to release, there was a lot of previews of the game, and a lot of the outlets praised the new changes. They praised the new focus on combat the first game did not have. Some outlets even compared it to the Phantom Pain in terms of arsenal and depth. So this got me hyped. This is exactly what I wanted out of a sequel for Death Stranding. Do not be tricked though. The combat in this game is nothing like the Phantom Pain. This game is not built for stealth. You quickly realize that when enemies spot you from half the map away, and reloading saves is not clean. The game doesn't encourage stealth. You're just supposed to run in and shoot them, put them down, hog tie them, and move on. It doesn't feel tactical like a Metal Gear game. Another issue with the combat in regards to the actual bosses, most of the bosses in this game are some sort of BT creature. These big tower creatures that come out of these tower pools that emerge from the ground. Visually quite cool, but actually fighting these bosses is so monotonous for one reason in particular, and that's you're constantly wading through the tower as you fight them. And then once the boss hits you, all your gear gets knocked off, and then you need to slowly stand back up again, keeping your balance, and then you gotta walk over and pick up your gear, and then you equip it again, and by that stage the enemy's already readied up this next attack, and the cycle starts again. It's just not fun having to wade through this tower all the time. What I can give the game credit for though is the character designs are still amazing. Yuji Shinkawa killed it again. Although I didn't like the story, the direction of the cutscenes is still really impressive. The game looks fantastic and is technically a masterpiece as well. The game runs amazing, even on a base PS5. I think that's a real testament to the Decima engine. But yeah, overall for me, disappointing. Is it a terrible game? Is it a bad game? No. But for me, going into it with all my expectations and all my hopes, for me it was disappointing. And so for that reason, it goes in C tier. Next up, we had Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Now right off the bat, I'll say I didn't finish this game. I will go back, I will finish it eventually, but as of now, I haven't finished. There's no reason for that. That's not a knock on its quality. I just haven't got around to it yet. But what I have played, I've really enjoyed. The pixel art is beautiful. Gameplay feels so good, so snappy. This of course is a callback more to the original Ninja Gaiden games on the NES rather than the 3D ones. The characters are quite endearing. Of course, with this style of game, the characters and story is quite two-dimensional, but it works for this type of game. You know, you really just want the story to get in to set up your motivations and then get out of the way. And that's what it does here. So yeah, haven't finished it yet, so it's hard to say if it's an A or an S. Maybe once I finish it, I'll have stronger opinions. But I'm just going to leave it in B for now. Next up, in August, we have another remake. This was the year for remakes apparently. Well, every year is now. We have Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, I should say. Of course, this is a remake of the third Metal Gear Solid game. I was cautiously optimistic about this game coming up to release. A few years ago, I would have been cautiously pessimistic, but with the release of the Silent Hill 2 remake last year, I definitely had a lot more confidence in Konami to release a good quality product. But still, I wasn't completely sold. There was only one good game that came out from Konami. They still hadn't won me back completely. So with the release of this game then, this was the real deciding point if Konami were back or not. And I'm happy to say they're back. This is a fantastic remake. Again, similar to Oblivion, it does not replace the original. There's still a lot of things better about the original. But I think this game, especially with its graphics and its art direction. It's his own thing, and when you go in with that expectation, it's impossible not to enjoy it. I really like the new models overall. This game is in the same boat where it's the original game code and even animations are still the same from the original, where it's Unreal Engine 5 handles the graphical renderings of this game, giving it the more modern, realistic look. So everything good about the original game is still here. The story is still probably the best in the series. It is a classic spy story, like a James Bond. The game does introduce a new camera that's a bit more modern, which I liked. That's the version, that's what I played with. I played with the modern control scheme, not the classic. And I think it works really well. Now this game also had two modes, performance mode and quality mode. Again, I played this on quality mode because the performance mode, while it was a lot more performant, obviously, that internal resolution was just so low that the final image was just so muddy that I did not enjoy looking at it. So I went with the quality mode, and I'm happy I did. I quickly got used to the 30 FPS, and I recommend playing it on quality mode. Playing on a PS5 too, I should mention. One change I really liked about the game was, this is going to be a spoilers for the ending, so skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled, but the way Volgan dies, you know, him on top of the Shagohod blowing up and electric going everywhere and him being engulfed in flames, they really make his look match the Metal Gear Solid 5 version of him as the Man on Fire. So it kind of creates a more visual coherence between those two games that wasn't there before. So I thought that was quite cool. Of course the question is now, what is the next remake? What Metal Gear game deserves the next remake? I think the obvious answer is Metal Gear Solid for the PS1. I'm not too sure about that one though. I think even to this day, the PS1 version still looks amazing. I think the art style of that game just can't be updated without losing something. I think 2 would look quite good in this new style. If they're remaking the first game, it probably would be more a remake of the Twin Snakes version for the GameCube. But yeah, whatever it is, I'm definitely more hopeful now that whatever it is will at least be good. So for all those reasons, I think this is another A tier game. It's a must play, even for longtime fans like myself who have played the original game so many times. I think the modern control scheme and just the new visuals, you know, they're not better, they're not worse, they're just different. I think it's cool to experience your favorite games in different ways. So yeah, it's a must buy, A tier, one of the best games of the year. Next up in August, we have Lost Soul Aside. Now, this game was also one of those games I had on that upcoming action games list I made earlier this year. And this is a game I've been following for 10 years. Since it was announced, I had a lot of hopes for this game, but I knew that this was a new studio and that it was unlikely that the game was going to be a AAA polished Devil May Cry like experience. I knew it was going to have some quirks, but that would be acceptable. Playing the game then, I would say it's not great. It's not terrible. The combat can be fun once you get into the flow, but there's a lot of issues with the writing. The story is terrible. The character writing the dialogue is terrible. I'm not too sure if something was just lost in translation because this is a Chinese studio, but the dialogue just is not well written. The character designs, some of them look cool, but definitely some of them just feel plain and forgettable. The overall atmosphere of the game, I definitely like the atmosphere that the original trailers portrayed better than what we actually got. Those original trailers were so moody and even lonely at times, with more muted colors and colder grays, but the final product is a lot brighter, and I think it loses a lot of what those trailers had good. The gameplay then, back on the gameplay, there is fun to be had here. It doesn't do anything so well that it stands out amongst the crowd, but it also doesn't feel so badly in places that I would say I would call the developers incompetent in any way. It's a fun game. Some issues I have with the gameplay, one of the weapons you can ride like a surfboard, which is quite handy when you're traversing the levels. But as we all know with these type of character action games, movement is everything. The fluidity of traversal into combat back into traversal is what makes the difference between something being enjoyable and clunky. And in this instance with the surfboard sword, it just wasn't enjoyable. Anytime you came to a stop or had a bump, your momentum completely went to zero. And then starting up the surfing again took a bit of time, and it just did not feel good. The game also had a lot of bugs on release, specifically to do with cutscenes and audio not playing right. With the story and voice acting already being so purred, this did not help it in the slightest. This game was also a full price game. I paid €70 for this game, and I do feel ripped off. This game should have been a €40 game. And even at that, I don't think it's worth that much. Definitely a disappointment after waiting so long. But with that being said, it's not a terrible game. If you find it on sale for under 20, maybe around 15, I think it's worth picking up at that price. Or if it ever becomes available on PS Plus, then it's worth playing. But I definitely would not pay full price for it. For all those reasons, I think I'll put it in the C tier. While it's not amazing, I do think it's not so bad that this new game studio is doomed. I think it's a decent first attempt. It didn't work out the way we hoped, but their next project could be way more impressive. There's definitely potential there. Next up in September, we have Silent Hill F. Now, this is the same we go back to with what I said with Metal Gear Solid, where it's Konami. They're back making games after Silent Hill 2 remake and the Metal Gear. I was definitely a lot more excited for this game than I was before those games were released. I was a bit worried though, because we didn't see any gameplay for this game coming up to release. We only seen gameplay maybe within the last month or two leading up to the game. Konami held like a kind of Nintendo Direct style showcase earlier in the year for this game. And during that Direct, they showed zero gameplay. It was just trailers and concept art. So that really worried me. We didn't see any actual gameplay with that, like, you know, a HUD and over the shoulder. But thankfully the game was released and it's great. The combat is really good. It's kind of clunky, but in all the right ways. Horror games need to have clunky combat because it makes the player feel not completely in control, and it really heightens that horror sense. The game also looks amazing. It's probably one of the strongest art directions out of any game this year. The soundtrack too is phenomenal. The game runs quite well. I played on the quality mode, which targeted 30 FPS, and I actually think it works for this type of game. Having 30 FPS and having the image not so fluid kind of heightens the horror aspect of it all, in my opinion. So playing at 30 really was not a downgrade for me. I quite enjoyed it. One thing I wasn't completely happy with though was the story, especially the ending. Like all the Silent Hill games, there's multiple endings, and the first ending to me did not feel satisfying at all. And I don't really like the expectation that someone needs to replay the game multiple times just to get a satisfying ending. Now, there's nothing wrong with having multiple endings as long as the initial one, the one that most people will get, is satisfying at least in some way. I'm not someone who replays games immediately after finishing them. So for me, this game, I probably won't replay it for probably at least another year. And only then will I then go for a different ending. So for me, my ending is that first ending, and it's not great. I have read up on some of the other endings and they are much better, but that's not the ending I got. So I can't sit here and pretend that that was my experience. Overall, definitely a must buy for horror fans or survival horror fans. It's a good Silent Hill game, worth playing. It's not set in Silent Hill, it's set in a rural Japanese town that kind of has the Silent Hill vibe going with the fog and the monsters based off fears. But I still think it's worth playing for fans of the series. Where does this go now in this tier list is the question. Definitely not an S tier. Is it an A tier? It's definitely going to be memorable for me. One of the better games I played this year. But does it really stand with these two games? Probably not. I'm going to put it in the B tier, but for me it's like a high B. Definitely would put it over Ninja Gaiden Black. Next up, in October, we had Battlefield 6. Now, for this game, like a lot of people, I was quite trepidatious going into it. EA has a history of releasing their games too early, the games being full of bugs, poorly designed systems. Just look back what happened with the disastrous launch of Battlefield 2046 or whatever it's called. I skipped that one because I knew coming to release that game it just looked bad. My history of Battlefield, I got in with Battlefield 4. Adore that game. It's one of my favorite games ever. The maps in that game are so memorable. I went back and played 3 then. Also love that. Played Hardline 1, 5. But yeah, 4 for me. Battlefield 4 is peak of the series. So seeing Battlefield 6, seeing that was going to be in a contemporary setting again, like Battlefield 4, that immediately excited me. But of course, there's always that EA. The fact that EA is making it, always looming. But then EA started saying a lot of right things. They acknowledged the disastrous launch of their last game, and they promised that it wasn't going to happen again. The beta happened, and things went smoothly. The matches were solid, the connection was solid, the guns felt good, the maps were enjoyable. The beta left a really good impression for me and for a lot of people. EA also made a statement saying that the game was going to take itself seriously, meaning that we weren't going to get skins like Nicki Minaj or Beavis and Butthead. Obviously a side to Call of Duty and to what it's become. So yeah, the game released and it was great. The campaign, a lot of people rated quite lowly. I don't think it's amazing, but I also don't think it's terrible. I haven't finished it, but sometimes between multiplayer matches, I just want to cool down, shoot at some bots, and so I'll just play a mission or two in the campaign, and it's fun. The multiplayer itself then, all the great modes are there. I mostly only play Conquest, because to me that is Battlefield. While the maps are enjoyable, to me none of them are memorable, not in the same way that the Battlefield 4 maps were. And I think that's because they feel a bit too small. Also, there's no levolution, at least not in the way Battlefield 4 had it, where when a building would collapse, it would immediately change the whole control spot. This is something they could change though in the future with new maps, so I don't think it's a complete lost cause. I played a lot on release. I still play now to this day, but not as frequently. I'm sure if they came out with a few more maps, I would jump back in again and grind some levels. But yeah, overall, I am happy with the game. Not disappointed at all. Happy to see where it's going to go. I think the game's only going to get better unless they ruin it with their battle passes and their money shops. With all that being said, I would say, I think it goes B tier as well. It's not perfect. There's a lot of fun to be had. Will I look back at 2025 and think Battlefield 6? Probably not. I think for a lot of people it will be a pass. It's not for everyone. So yeah, I think for me it sits in the B tier, which is still good. Still a very good game. Now, also in October, we had Ninja Gaiden 4. I was stoked for this game coming out. I've already mentioned it, but I played all the games. I got caught up on the whole series, or at least the 3D games coming up to this release. And in that time, I became a real fan of the series and as Ryu Hayabusa as a character, even though he's not much of a character, but I think he's cool. This game was developed in collaboration with Platinum Games and of course Team Ninja. I had a lot of expectations going into it. Platinum are the GOATs for character action games. Nier Automata, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising. So needless to say, my expectations were quite high. And I would say that they were mostly met. I'll go over the negatives first and then end with the positives because overall, my opinion of this game is quite positive. So for me, the negatives are the story. The story is paper thin. It's okay for most of it, but then there's one part near the end that really annoyed me, where I wouldn't say what happens, but a huge story moment happens. And for me, I didn't care about the character that much, or the character's relationship with the other characters to really have an impact. I don't think the relationships in the game were built up that well. So when these big major story points happen, the payoff just isn't satisfying. It just feels not earned. Another thing that I didn't like about the game was that the game, every level, it's always raining, and they have an explanation in world for that. It's this dragon husk in the sky making the whole world constantly rain, or at least Japan is constantly in a state of downpour. But I just didn't like that every level had this gloomy feel. They all looked great in terms of art direction, but a lot of them blended together then because of that constant hanging gloomy overtones. If you look back at the earlier Ninja Gaiden games, we always got these lush green jungles and foliage. Hayabusa Village was always a bright place to be in any game. But here, every level just has this gloomy look. And it's quite disappointing because the end of the game, like literally the end, the credits are this playable mission, sort of. And in that mission, the rain's gone. It's a bright sunny day. Our character Yakumo is running on these rooftops and it looks great. And I just thought to myself, why couldn't the rest of the game be like that? And I know there is DLC planned for this game, so I'm hoping that whatever we get there will be a lot different than the base game. But yeah, kind of a negative for me overall. Another issue I had was Ryu. Now, going into this game, I knew that Ryu wasn't the main character. I knew he was going to be relegated to a lot less missions than Yakumo, who is the real main character. And so I was setting myself up not to be disappointed when I didn't play the whole game as Ryu. But even with those set expectations, I was still disappointed because when we actually play as Ryu, he doesn't feel like a complete character. He only has one weapon, and everything Ryu can do, Yakumo can do, and much more. So Ryu just doesn't feel like a complete character at all. Yakumo, as a character, I like him. I like his design. I love his moveset. He has so many moves. I don't think any player could use his entire moveset to its full capacity. There's just so much, but that's okay. Some of the moves I didn't like are the ones that had you spinning the analog stick in like a full circle, similar to like a fighting game. I don't think that really works in a 3D game like this with a controllable camera. But because the moveset is so large, it's easy to ignore those moves and you still feel like you've got so much available. So to me, it's not really a downside, it's just more personal preference. Although edgy, the voice acting is quite good. The cutscenes are directed quite well. The art direction overall is fantastic. A must play for any Ninja Gaiden fan and any character action game fan in general. I look forward to the DLC and whatever else this series has in store. With all that being said, where do we place this? Definitely not S tier. I don't think any game of this year is gonna be in that section. A tier, could be. B tier, definitely not in C tier. It's gonna be between A and B. When I think back of 2025, will I think about this game? Will it stand out in my memory? I think so. I think it's worth the price of the game at full price. Definitely, if there's a sale on, pick this up. Yeah, I want to keep it an A tier. Even with all those issues, I still had a blast playing. Lastly, coming out in November was Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. So if you don't know, this game is a spin-off from Tears of the Kingdom. It was developed by Koei Tecmo and it's a Musou game, so a Warriors style game, not a traditional Zelda game. This is a prequel to Tears of the Kingdom. In that story, Zelda goes back in time and, throughout Tears of the Kingdom, we get these memories that piece together what happened during that time that Zelda was in the past. But this game is a full exploration of that story. We stick with Zelda, or we stick in that time period for the entire game. And coming up to this game, I actually played the other Hyrule Warriors game, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and I really enjoyed it. It was my first proper Musou game that I finished. I played a bit of the Berserk game, which was good, but it wasn't as high quality as these two games. But I played Age of Calamity and I had a blast. I knew going into it that that game wasn't canon and that a lot of the fans didn't care for it because of that sole reason. But it's a must play for any fan of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Just that universe, that version of the Zelda universe. Even though it's not canon, it's worth playing. This game is canon and is essential to me for that version of Hyrule. The story here is fantastic. Even though we knew beforehand where it was going to end, that was okay. One complaint about Tears of the Kingdom over Breath of the Wild is the sages were so boring and not even characters compared to the champions of Breath of the Wild. But in this game, we get to see the sages a lot more. They become three-dimensional characters. Their designs are amazing. By end credits, I really liked every single character. Two characters in particular stood out to me. That would be the Construct and Calamo. When Calamo was first introduced, I thought to myself this was going to be the annoying mascot character that was always cracking a joke and getting in the way of the serious moments. But by the end of the game, I loved him. His bromance with the Construct was so good. They had a great friendship that really had a lasting impact on me. And this game as a whole has had a great lasting impact on me. I'm going to think back on it very fondly. Although I really enjoyed Age of Calamity, I think this is the better game. There's some gameplay changes here that make the whole Musou formula even more enjoyable than it was in that first game. Also, I should mention, this is the first game I bought for my Switch 2 that is a Switch 2 exclusive. I bought Ninja Gaiden Ragebound for my Switch 2 as well, but of course that's just the Switch 1 version playing on a Switch 2. So yeah, this is my first Switch 2 game, and I'm happy that it is because this is a fantastic game. For me, this is easy. This is going A tier. This is going to be a very memorable game for me. I loved it. I think there's plans for DLC for this game, so I'm really happy for that. Definitely will be playing all that day one. So yeah, there we have it. Unfortunately, no S tier games, but that's okay. Not every year is going to have an S tier game. We have a good few games in A tier. Now, I will acknowledge that two of these are remakes, and really the good things about these games, what makes them A tier, exist in the original game, and it's not because of the remaster, so maybe that's a bit of a cheat. But yeah, I think these two games really deserve, they kind of stand out in this year for being new and must plays. B tier then, all still great games. Definitely if any of these games were on sale, they're definitely must buys. If you're already fans of these franchises, then well, you probably already own them. C then, yeah, more games here than I would hope for. Of course, I wish there were no games here, but each one of these games was disappointing to me for one reason or another, and so they had to. I couldn't put them any higher than C. Thankfully though, there was no D games. I don't think any game on this list was outright bad. Whether some games like Lost Soul aside, where I did feel ripped off for the price, and I don't think anyone should pay full price for this game. Pricing aside, I still think there is a enjoyable game here, and I would not call it bad. So yeah, we've got no D tier games. That's gonna do it. I really enjoyed making this, so I hope you enjoyed watching it. I will be back next year with more devlogs. I'm going to do more of a quality over quantity approach to my devlogs going forward. So they won't be monthly, they will be, I'm not sure, they might be every 3 months, or just when I have enough good stuff to show that I'm proud of, and I'm not just making the devlog for the sake of making a devlog. So if that excites you, then please subscribe. Maybe I'll make another video in the new year looking at some more upcoming games I'm excited for, and then we can do this all again next. Thank you so much for watching. We had a great 2025, and I hope you have a better 2026.